Hello, I'm Casey Aiken, and this is 21 This Week. Coming up next, is the Purple Line the project to nowhere? Montgomery County has taken an unorthodox approach to review police conduct. And finally, a Montgomery County potpourri. Stay tuned. Our panel of insiders will give you the story behind the story. We're joined by education activist Cynthia Rubenstein, past chairman of the Montgomery County Republican Central Committee, Mark Uncapher, Republican Jerry Cave, and political strategist Susan Heltemes. Stay tuned for these stories and more on the next 21 This Week. Last week, Governor Larry Hogan made news when he expressed an interest in the high-speed maglev train they had just taken a ride on. Immediately, local politicians focused their attention on transportation projects that are already in the planning stage, which for Montgomery County means the construction of the Purple Line. Mark, Maryland Transportation Secretary Pete Ron recommended that Governor Hogan approve the building of the Purple Line, but only if construction costs could be reduced. And now it's well known that Governor Hogan is not a proponent of the project. So is this just a shell game being played to keep Hogan from making an unfavorable political decision?
Well, I think, it's been a short review process, and one of the things that can be looked at is to have whether or not the real estate interests of the areas right around those areas that can do more to contribute to pay for the project, if that's an option. This was one of the tools that was used for the Silver Line and really hasn't been part of the Purple Line. Rather than have everybody in the state pay, have the immediate beneficiaries pay.
That's an interesting approach. Cynthia, but wouldn't it be more beneficial for the communities involved just to have bigger highway east-west transportation routes rather than this increasingly looking white elephant?
Casey, white elephant, my purple patootie. The Purple Line is not only a transportation project that will bring workers from the east to the west and spur economic development, but it's been on the books for so many years. It's been debated to death, and the Transportation Secretary is willing to recommend it with some cost savings. So I think the governor needs to get off the dime, approve it, and we need to build.
And I think it's important in this conversation for those of us who live down county, Casey, and who do east-west all the time, not on the highways. The problem when the red line was built, it was just down, it was a circle. Transportation isn't all into the city anymore, it's cross-county. And I think that it's really important when we discuss the Marriott decision, we discuss the millennials. Millennials living in Silver Spring and Bethesda don't want cars. They don't have cars, and this is a convenient way to get across county. And one of the things that's supposedly being discussed is to drop a few of the stops, and we don't need any more roads. We need the Purple Line.
What about the environmental impact along the Crescent Trail? This thing will be
Casey,
a disaster.
I was on the original committee in the early 80s that studied this. We studied this for 3.5 years, and we went to other sites where this is done. The whole time it was built, the plant, it was that hikers and bikers and the train can survive. We're not talking diesel engines, Casey. You know, it's far better for the environment than cars shooting down the road.
So I just want to make sure I understood it. You can build a transportation project and not harm the environment?
What do you mean?
That's what I wanted to thought. Mark.
I was going to say one of the things we shouldn't ignore is the existing bus transportation, and one of the weaknesses of the Purple Line is it does not significantly improve the speeds going across the.
Except that there is an issue that everybody seems to ignore. If you are trying to get along East-West Highway, for instance, in the winter when there's ice and snow, the buses don't do it. They cannot get up those hills. So the light rail is really helpful in that case. When you can't do, especially in the winter, it's really, really helpful. And it does go faster than
What I think is really interesting is that you introduced some levity into the conversation today, Casey, because you started it out with, if they reduce costs. And with public projects in Maryland and in general, that's always what they do, under budget and on time. Why don't they just get rid of the toll on the ICC and free up some of the traffic?
That has nothing to do with traffic down county. It's a great point
It
that
would
you
take
can
a
make.
lot of the traffic off the Beltway.
No, it wouldn't.
Yes, it would.
One last thing about the Purple Line. This is something that, I mean, I have lived in the Long Branch neighborhood near University Boulevard since the early 80s. And I have seen the stream of people coming from the east, from Prince George's County, and even from the Long Branch neighborhood, trying to get to jobs.
And
many
it's good
of
for
them
the college
are
kids,
are
too.
very lowly paid workers. It would improve their economic prospects. It would also drive some very much needed development for that part of the county.
All right, well, let's, in the last 60 seconds.
You're
that
wrong,
we-
Casey, on
No.
this issue.
Susan, just wait. Thank you. In the last 60 seconds, let's have a little prediction as to whether or not Governor Hogan's going to approve the Purple Line. We'll start with Mark.
I think ultimately it's going to be hard to come up with the numbers to justify the project.
Cynthia.
He'll approve it, but he'll demand those cost savings.
Susan.
It's going to get done.
Jerry.
No.
Jerry is right for once in his life. When we come back.
Democrats being the positive, they'll say it's going to happen.
Okay, we'll find out. Let's have a little money on this. Let's go to Vegas and get some odds on this bad boy. All right, we got to go to our next topic, which is the intense scrutiny that the public has focused on police forces in the aftermath of the Ferguson, Missouri shooting and the riots and sacking of Baltimore that occurred after the death of someone in police custody, has forced those in law enforcement to seek ways to reassure the public that internal review of police actions are going to be fairly monitored. Last week, Montgomery County Police Chief Thomas Manger announced an effort to maintain that public trust by working out a plan to allow a cross-jurisdictional task force review instances where a fatality occurred while in police custody. Susan, what do you think of the proposal?
I think it's a great idea. The intensity and the relations that exist within a police department, including internal review, isn't going to be a matter. And this follows on the heels of what our state's attorney, John McCarthy, said, that he also is going to be working, he made a deal with Howard County to work on issues like this. And I think it takes out some of the intensity, and I think it's all for the good of Montgomery County.
Thank you. Jerry, the community distrust in Baltimore was visible, and if Baltimore City had such a review system in place, wouldn't it have prevented the violent outbreak that just occurred?
No question. If you had a review process like this, you wouldn't have the unemployment, the gangsters, the drug problem, and all the things that's causing violence in Baltimore that causes the police to have to be police. And it would have prevented the state's attorney in Baltimore from issuing a directive to the police to be more aggressive in their policing. Who'd have thunk it would have been so simple? But on a less sarcastic note, I was on the Maryland Charter Commission and we reviewed this type of thing. We talked to the police about it, and we all kind of agreed it just wasn't necessary.
Well, I have to think it's a pretty good idea myself. Mark.
I was going to say, I mean, the good news is that Montgomery County does not have a history of this. I just hope that the jurisdiction that we sort of share resources with is not Prince George's County, which was under a consent decree from the Justice Department under the Bush administration for having problems.
Well, look,
the way
look,
the way
I-
to solve these isn't after the fact, but are having processes and training in advance, because the variation among jurisdictions, among police departments, is really rather surprising around the country.
You know,
Sometimes I
this
think
is-
I'm living in an alternative universe. The problem in these communities is not the police. The police are the only people keeping it from complete anarchy. You had 43 people killed in Baltimore last month, and the police didn't kill any of them. The police are the only people keeping it from chaos.
police
And if
are
you
having
care
a
about the people
slowdown.
there from getting killed, then you need to address that problem instead of focusing on the police. This is great political theater by the left, but it is just an out-and-out
Casey,
lie.
I don't think anybody on the left or right would say that there are problems with the police in
Yes,
Baltimore.
but there wasn't in Ferguson. The guy completely did everything
We're not
correctly.
talking about Ferguson, we're talking about Baltimore.
And Baltimore has not been vetted yet. You can't condemn the police. You can't sit here
the
and judge
Justice
jury.
Department said there were
They're
a lot of
not the
problems.
judge and jury. Let Baltimore play out and then comment on it. but this thing blew up over Ferguson, and the police did everything according to procedure.
But Jerry,
nobody would
you
agree
can
with-
compare the performance of urban police departments, New York City, Washington, Baltimore, and Baltimore's track record is significantly worse than that. There's really, the numbers are pretty strong. In New York and Washington,
And you know what I'd
also
like,
have
Mark?
challenging environments.
I'd like the people in charge of Baltimore for the last 60 years to take some responsibility for it, which happens to be the Democratic
Well, let's
Party,
get
who's
back-
been in complete charge of the place
I think that
for
in
3 generations.
I think in Montgomery County, I have to give Chief Manger credit for really working to have an incredible police department. But it was very interesting. The state legislature has set up a committee to study these policing issues across the state. And the one soundbite that I heard this week as they got started is that in Montgomery County, our police department is only 49% minority, and there's slightly more. But I think
It's not a question of what your percentages
What
are.
are we
It's
in,
a
a
question-
social engineering?
Hold on,
Well, no,
hold on, Jerry.
I think-
If the question is really how the police address the community and how when you have complaints, because you're always going to have complaints about the police, whether justified or not, how those the complaints are reviewed and adjudicated.
Well,
that's the
well,
issue.
and the
it's
other-
not whether or not you've got 15% Hispanic and 22% African American.
that was a problem in Ferguson, but in
it's-
Montgomery County, though, now that we have police cameras, the first 100 are on officers. What they have found across the country is that there are less complaints from the community because they know what happened, and the police are modifying their behavior and they aren't quite as brutish. So I do think that that's going to make a difference not only in Montgomery County but across the country.
I got to tell you.
Montgomery County police don't have the problems they have anywhere else. The Bethesda, Rockville, Frederick corridor is one of the safest in the country.
It is, but
and has for factors that have nothing to do with the police.
Well,
But the cameras are good for the police as well, because
they are.
that
I think
that
cameras are
will
better for the police.
better
Yeah,
for
but
the
this
police.
whole process of demonizing the police is just unfair to those people. And look what the result that's happened. The murder rate in the country has gone sky high.
The murder-
It was going down, and now it's going up everywhere. And the situation in Baltimore, I mean, you've got a drug war going on.
Well,
It's just insane.
I mean,
And
I think what this discussion has just summarized is that we're happy that the police in Montgomery County do such a responsible job. And yes, there are issues in other areas and other jurisdictions of our very own home state. When we come back from this short break, the panel will address recent happenings in Montgomery County in our Montgomery County Potpourri segment. Stay tuned. And welcome back, Susan. This week, the Maryland House of Delegates Speaker Mike Bush gave an endorsement to Delegate Kumar Barve in the 8th District congressional race. Does this endorsement by the House Speaker change the dynamics of that contest?
Well, probably not. Jamie Raskin got Mike Miller's endorsement, and if you start stacking up endorsements, Jamie Raskin's endorsements are a lot. He has a lot more. But when it comes down to it, Mike Miller and Mike Bush don't live in Montgomery County.
Okay. Well, is that the final word, Susan? We'll ask Cynthia on this. Cynthia, what do you think? You live in this district. What do you think
the
about
only
political
the only
players?
people who care about who's getting which endorsement from whom are the party apparatchiks. Voters by vast numbers don't care. It's very, very early. They don't care now, and they won't care, as election day approaches. The endorsements might make the candidates feel good, but they really aren't going to bring
it's
voters
just
to the
free
polls.
advertising.
I completely
is
agree
what-
with
is what-
Cynthia.
what it
People in
is.
Montgomery County, they don't know Mike Miller from Mike Bush.
But you know what? Jamie Raskin has the endorsement, for instance, of Brian Frosch. Now that's an endorsement that might weigh. But we don't even have.
If Brian Frosch uses some of his political capital to
Yes.
help trumpet.
That's it.
Well,
That's it.
the question is whether in this district, Kumar Barve or any of the other candidates, Jamie Raskin or any of the other candidates, has a clear lead at this point in time? I'd say no.
Well, and don't forget Will Jawando, Kathleen Matthews, and Valerie Irvin says she's coming in this next
don't
week.
forget that in the last election, the Republican who was outspent 100-1, almost exactly 100-1, ran a minimal campaign, got roughly 40% of the vote. So the potential is a little like District 6 for this, because this isn't just a Montgomery County district. This goes up
Well,
to
who is going to run on your side?
It goes up to Carroll County and includes some of the most conservative parts
But
of.
who's going to run on your side?
We'll see. But it
Are you
includes,
going to have somebody?
certainly will. Yes, but it includes some of the most
We wanted to
conservative
talk
parts.
to you about that, Susan.
Yeah,
Maybe you
we'll
cross
run by
over
the
and help us
candidate.
out.
All right, we got
Yeah,
to keep.
switch parties, I think not,
We
Jerry.
got to keep moving because we have a very hot topic right now, and that's electronic cigarettes have become increasingly popular as some of the health hazards associated with smoking tobacco are reduced when vaping. Nonetheless, to vape or not to vape in public is no longer the question, since the Montgomery County Council has banned e-cigs in public places where traditional tobacco smoking is prohibited. Mark, if e-cigarettes don't produce secondhand smoke, what is the problem here? So why were they banned?
Because the Montgomery County Council doesn't actually need any scientific evidence to do anything. I mean, the FDA is still looking at this. They do have a review project. They haven't reached any conclusion, but the county council doesn't need actual facts in order to regulate against something. But you know that, didn't you?
No, I don't know that. Jerry, what do you think of this action?
Well, what I think is interesting is that the Democrats like to control things they don't like, and they even like to control things they don't know anything about. They just like to control things. And I personally don't understand it. I'm just kind of busy with my own life and what I got going on, and I don't want to control you or Susan or Cynthia, on occasion Mark, but really I just don't get why they want to, it's all about control. Control this, do
the
this,
reason
don't
is
do that.
These
They
e-cigarettes,
don't know, Susan.
they have
Well, I want
nicotine
Susan-
in. It is a given. There is nicotine in this, in these.
Right. So, but the,
Yes.
And they are-
that's
it
the
is-
individual who's inhaling it.
But it's addictive.
Right.
And
But this isn't
So is
banning.
Wait a minute,
so
wait
is
a minute.
caffeine.
Banning cigarettes.
no,
Let's close down
let me
Starbucks.
finish. The thing is that youth smoking in this country and in Maryland was going down like this. Now kids think that this is safe. It's not. And initial research has shown that kids are switching from vaping to cigarettes. And I think for that reason alone, get rid of them.
When you're talking about smoking going down in this country, does that also include all the pot the kids are smoking too?
That has nothing to do with this. We're
Right.
talking about cigarettes.
Cynthia, you've been rather quiet on this subject.
Yes, I'm waiting my turn. But the county council, I am one of the most rabid anti-smoking advocates on the face of the earth, and I was taught at my father's knee in the 1960s when he railed against the TV networks for showing cigarette commercials during prime time and family TV viewing time. However, it makes me a little uncomfortable that that vaping cigarettes have been banned because
they haven't been
it
banned.
is
They've been banned in public places.
banned in public places because it is not a secondhand smoke issue. It's an individual.
It's a
but
nicotine thing.
But the council has had in the past the record of stepping ahead on public health issues, and that's
And
what they've
being
done.
right.
Right. Well, thank you, Susan. Having been heavily criticized for its policies associated with free-range kids, the state's Child Protective Services has clarified its views about children playing or walking alone outdoors and announced that it would not intercede unless the children have been harmed or face a substantial risk of harm. So, Cynthia, is this a good policy or move or not? And will it have any effect with the people in Silver Spring who have been harassed by Child Protective Services here in Montgomery County?
Well, the Yetta family in Silver Spring has made an initial, very cautionary comment in that this is a small step in the right direction, but they wish that there was much more clarity and specificity to these, this new explanation and clarification. However, on the state level, the state wants to maintain and retain its own ability to discern what a hazardous situation is for children. So they're still not on the same page, but yes, it is a small positive step in clarifying and relieving parents' anxiety over allowing their kids to walk home from the library alone.
This is a real-
No, hold on, Jerry. This is Susan. But the problem here is the state has announced this policy, but the county, which was the real perpetrator of the problem with the Silver Spring parents, really isn't subject to it.
Yeah, they are. They're taking a step back. They had already announced that, and you know, there is a fine line when you leave kids out on the streets this day. You know, it is different than when Cynthia was talking about the '60s and smoking cigarette on TV. When are kids safe and when kids are not safe? And I think in the case of this family, they were very careful, Casey, about when they would let their kids go. And there is hope here. And I hope that parents everywhere will use good
All right,
common sense.
But the real question is whether you're going to have government officials making reasonable decisions and not intruding on the decisions of parents. That's the problem we had in Silver Spring, where there was a complaint filed by a nosy neighbor or an angry neighbor, and then the county overreacted to it. That was the problem.
I think the county realizes they got not only a lot of bad press, but they were probably a little too assertive. They've taken a big step back, and I think parents have to heed that you can't just let your kids go loose. Child Protective Services are going to still be around.
Mark.
This is what happens when you have a village bring up children. You get the government involved.
All right.
No, it's a nosy neighbor.
This is one of the saddest.
Jerry, I'm sorry. We're out of time.
It is sad.
It's not sad, Susan. You're happy for a change. Stay tuned for Parting Shots. And welcome back. Now with Parting Shots, Mark Uncapher.
Well, one of the good pieces of news in Maryland is that the Cove Point project has been moving forward. It's been approved by FERC, the Energy Regulatory Agency. It's been approved for the energy from the Department of Energy for doing exports. This is going to allow for exports of as much as $7 billion to come out of Maryland. Already there's a contract that's been signed with companies in Japan that our governor was involved with in the last 2 weeks. So this is a good project, and it's an example of where our new governor has shown real leadership in helping move this forward.
Thank you, Mark. Cynthia Rubenstein, your parting shot.
Well, it's kind of a sad news day in the news business in Montgomery County because the Gazette is closing down. Jeff Bezos is letting it go. And so the source for a lot of local news that I've depended on for the last few decades is going to go away. So that's sad for me and sad for much of Montgomery County. And what it means is there is an opportunity, and one of the opportunities is for our own Montgomery community media to step up and help fill that hole.
Thank you, Cynthia. Susan Heltemes, your parting shot.
I want to add on to what Cynthia said. What this means is that other communities, they were able to find buyers for the Gazette. They could not find a buyer for Prince George's in Montgomery County. As a result, 69 people are out of jobs. And you knew it was happening. They stopped home delivery in a lot of neighborhoods. The newspaper got thinner. They stopped publishing the Friday edition. And if you didn't get to the library at the crack of dawn on Wednesdays, you wouldn't get a copy of the Gazette. But I encourage Montgomery Community Media also to take a big step forward. They are starting, and it would be nice to go back. And the other one is Bethesda Magazine. And I checked online, Gazette.net is over.
Thank you, Susan. Jerry Cave, your parting shot.
One of my clients is a home builder, and he says it's an existential threat that young people aren't going into the trades to be carpenters, bricklayers, and so on. In Baltimore, we have tens of thousands of people who have no job skills and no jobs. We have tens of thousands of abandoned houses. We have spending tens of millions of dollars on school for kids to take courses they have to take to graduate that they won't pass, don't want to pass. And I would love to see some creative thinking to put all that together and rebuild those homes in Baltimore, develop job skills for those people that would carry on afterwards. And you can count on the people that have been running Baltimore to do something creative and productive like that.
Thank you, Jerry. I want to thank everybody on the panel for being here tonight. And I want to thank the viewers for tuning in each and every week to Montgomery County's hardest-hitting political talk show. For 21 this week, I'm Casey Aiken. Remember, you can follow us on our social media sites to keep informed on all the happenings in Montgomery County. And you can watch us on, follow us on Twitter. Is that it?
Just say Twitter and Facebook.
Twitter and
You tweet.
Facebook.
Yeah.
Oh, done.
For Twitter and Facebook, I'm Casey Aiken.